Sure, the Illini have a big football game on Saturday night against the Penn State Nittany Lions, but did you also know that men's basketball starts practices next week? Let's talk about it. Locked On Illini, let's go.
You are Locked On Illini, your daily podcast on the Illinois Fighting Illini. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Illini. Thank you for making us your first listen every single day. Simple reminder, please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You can find us on all your favorite audio platforms and on YouTube, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Sunny Verma. You can find me at IlliniCast. You can find me at the Sunny V. And on Facebook and Instagram, just do a search for Locked On Illini. Also, I did want to mention that soon I'm going to be reopening the Discord that some of you joined early on during the Locked On Illini lifespan, which I had to shut down for temporary reasons, but it'll be opening back up, and it's going to be a way for me to, again, banter back and forth with you lot during the week. Today, we're going to change the vibes around here a little bit. Of course, we've been talking football all week long, but did you know on Monday that basketball practice is actually starting for the Illini? So I'm going to be bringing on a special guest, and we're going to be discussing the up and down roller coaster ride that has been the men's basketball team offseason. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, so we've been talking football all week here at Locked On Illini, and deservedly so. It's not very often that the Illini football team starts the season 4-0, but today I wanted to mix things up a little bit, only because starting next week, we're going to get back into more basketball content, and I know that's what Illini fans are really always very passionate about, and so I want to kind of kickstart that today by bringing on a personality that all Illini fans are familiar with, and that is Mike Carpenter from the 200 Level Podcast. Mike, thank you so much for jumping on.
Anytime, Sunny. I appreciate it.
So Mike has a book that I believe it's coming out on Thursday, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But Mike, let's kind of talk about football first before we jump into the basketball side of things. Obviously, 4-0, first time since 2011. You host a very popular podcast, and you talk to a lot of Illini fans. Like, what do you think that the vibes are with the football team and the fan base right now?
As high as I've seen it probably since the early Zook years, when there was some genuine excitement because of recruiting and then the surprise Rose Bowl run in 2007. I noticed it lots even before the Kansas game, that there was a palpable buzz, and you could tell that the fan base was willing to give this coaching staff another opportunity. We all recognize it's objectively better. We just wanted to see the tangible wins on the field against better opponents. And yeah, Kansas is 1-3, whatever. You can't do anything about that. We'll see what Nebraska ends up doing, but already you have two, by our standards, signature wins in primetime games where all of Illini fans were watching this team expecting something bad to happen. And even when it did, even when Luke fumbled in the fourth quarter, it didn't cost you the game. The team stuck with it, and I think that they have this kind of competence is a word that's been thrown around a lot. I agree with that. But I also think that we started to see in the Nebraska game, especially from quarter 1 to quarter 4, and especially overtime, I think this team's improving right in front of our eyes on all facets. And to me, with the schedule that you have coming up, especially in November, where it really opens up for you, there's a lot of potential for this team. And I think the buzz is palpable. I think it is justified. And I think it's a mix of catharsis for long-suffering fans, but also the pure joy that we all felt a week ago watching what was just an objectively fun win against Nebraska.
Exactly right. I mean, I think the Illini fan base wants to be passionate about football. We're so incredibly passionate about basketball as is, but football for the longest time just hasn't given us the reason to. And as you said, the fan base kind of offered the opportunity to the coaching staff and the players week 2 against Kansas, and Illinois came out victorious. And then they surprised pretty much the college football world with that victory on Friday night, looking not just like it was a lucky victory, but like a good football team. And now we've shot up all the way up to number 19 in the AP poll, 21 in the coaches poll. So I agree with you, but let's talk about a little basketball right now. Monday, apparently, the men's basketball team might be starting practices. And this last year was a roller coaster ride. You had everything going on with Terrence Shannon Jr. The team struggled a little bit. And then all of a sudden, we had the Big Ten tournament run. And then obviously, finally, we're able to get over the Sweet 16 hump and make it to Elite 8, only to get embarrassed by the UConn Huskies, who a lot of teams would be embarrassed if they shared the court with. And then you would think the offseason started and at least things would mellow out a little bit and take it easy. But in true Illinois basketball fashion, the offseason seems to be just as hectic as our regular seasons tend to be. We had 10 new players on the roster now. We have all of a sudden over the past week, a coaching staff turnover. I mean, Mike, I guess, what are your vibes or what are your feelings on the offseason for Illini basketball at the moment?
I know the Tim Anderson thing was a bit of a curveball, but we're at such a healthy place as a program where something like that would have been absolutely crushing. I would even say 2-3 years ago, because post-Io Kofi, there was the excitement of what we'd done, but there was the uncertainty of what lay ahead. And I'll go back even to when Adam Miller transferred out.
Sure.
And that was a scary moment. And think of all the players that have gone since. And now the coaching upheaval, even that same offseason back in 2021, when both Antigua, well, not both, all three, Antigua, Gentry, and Chin Coleman all left. So I think there's enough of a track record to suggest that Underwood is remarkably malleable, flexible, adaptable, willing to adapt, but getting really good at it. It's one thing to be willing to change. It's another thing to actually excel at change. So when it comes to the Tim Anderson thing, to me, it's mere, a footnote, not really a huge deal. To me, the biggest story of the offseason has been amassing this really interesting collection of talent that I think we recognize in November and December, they will not be the best versions of themselves. And there will be a couple games where I'll have to remind myself to not jump off the deep end if they struggle, which they will, I think, in a few games. But when you have this really cool mix of European talent, of transfer portal veterans that got plenty of starts somewhere else, like a Trey White, we don't even talk about him. Right. He might be pretty good. We'll find out. But I have not been this excited and content at the same time, Sunny, since Self was here. There's a feeling of both short and long-term optimism that I have not felt as an Illini basketball fan. So when something bad happens now, whereas 4 or 5 years ago, I would have thought, here we go again. I just don't have that anymore. It's a pretty nice, unencumbering feeling to have.
It's a really nice feeling. Even if you remember at the beginning of the offseason, we were going after guys like AJ Storr, and there was a lot of guys very high up on the list that we were rumored to be getting, and each and every one seemingly fell through. And I felt at that point, there was a little sense of panic going on with the fan base, but that's just kind of what this fan base does. It's known as one of the more passionate basketball fan bases for a reason. But in typical Brad Underwood form, just a couple weeks later, we're checking out some guy, what's his name, Danim, out in Spain.
Igor
Danim, I believe his name is, right? Checking him out, and things didn't work out, and all of a sudden everyone's upset again. And then what happens? Then there's another guy that they're also scouting, Kaspars Jakushonis. Now I'm watching this kid's tape, and I'm like, how did no one spot this guy before? He looks like he's a fantastic player, and he's arguably one of the most talked about players over the offseason with his play both in FIBA and his play with Barcelona. And it just kept rolling from there. A couple months later, we get a 5-star in Will Riley. And so it's just, now we look at our roster, and I've talked about this before. Last year's team was obviously better because it's had the veteran presence. But I think pure talent-wise, this year's team, the guys that we're going to be sending out on the court, might have a higher talent level than the team that we put out last year.
I agree with that. And I think the tricky thing will be this, because I felt the same way about the 2022-23 team after Kofi and Trent got that Big Ten championship in 22. You get all these new transfers in, Matthew Meyer, Terrence Shannon, Coleman Hawkins comes back, and it felt like there's our trio with all these stud freshmen. So we are both short and long-term. We got it locked up. So I want to try to avoid jumping the gun too much, because who's to say that we won't have issues getting these pieces to fit together? I do think, though, the reason that I'm a little bit more optimistic about this group is that they are very skilled across the board, offensively skilled. And if there was one thing that we learned throughout this season, when all of a sudden we have like a top 3 offensive efficiency, offense wins championships. And I know it didn't quite for Illinois, but why was it? Because they ran into UConn, a juggernaut that was even better than you were at offense. There's no shame in that, despite, well, maybe shame in the 30-0 run, but what can you do, I guess? But I do think that what it showed Brad Underwood is there is a very distinct path forward in terms of how do you construct a roster. And from the get-go, whether it be a Colin Boswell, who I think is going to be even better with the kind of talent that he has around him, a Benham Rickhouse, who we don't talk about as much anymore because that was back in April. And we added about 5 guys since, and he's going to be the starting 4, presumably, and be a very high-volume scorer on a team that's just going to score in bunches when all is said and done, I think. So I like that last year set this program up, I think, with a template. And now as guys leave, they go out and they fill those specific roles. And last year, yes, the high-end experienced talent was better than what we're going to have. There's not going to be a Terrence and there's not going to be a Marcus Damask. But think about how thin it got at certain points last year until you had a heater from Dane or you had Luke Goody contributing in the postseason. Coleman was pretty steady throughout, but you did have these kind of zigging and zagging with your 4, 5, 6 guys on the roster once you got past those first 3. I'm excited to see a group of guys 7 through 8 maybe where you might not have that alpha dog, but you have a lot more options overall.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to practices starting and really seeing which individuals, because right now it looks like we have 9 or 10 really good rotational players. And that you figure with practices, folks are going to start separating themselves. And as the season gets closer, Mike, I'll have you on. We'll do maybe a little season preview together. But before I let you go, you have a book coming out. Can you let the folks from Locked On Illini country know what this is all about?
I got a copy right here. So there we go. So this is a book, the 200 level, that is based on the last 30 years of Illini basketball. I've done the 200 level podcast since 2019. I've been on radio locally since basically 2003, but I'm a townie. So I wanted to document my experience as an Illini basketball fan. Maybe a football book will come at some point, but we can be honest, basketball has given us a lot more as a fan base than football has. And with that, I wanted to create something that people could read and sort of relive their own experiences through these moments. And there are some lean years. I do cover Gross and the early Underwood years, but for the most part, upon writing it and reflecting on all this stuff, I was reminded just how much success this program's had. And there is a lingering thing. Yes, we've not won the national title yet. That is, I talk about that in this book and what this does to the fan base, but we're still pretty damn good. And it's a very celebratory book. So I think the fans will enjoy just kind of going down memory lane. It is pure nostalgia. And I hope that it just allows them to reflect on the many memories they have with this basketball program.
I'm looking forward to getting a chance to read it. Mike, you're definitely one of the more passionate fans that most Illini fans at this point are well aware of. Mike, I'll also leave a link to the book in the description of this video. So please, if you have a chance, check it out. Mike is fantastic. Check out 200 Level Podcast. You release about once or twice a week. Is that correct?
A couple times a week during football and basketball season. I mean, hey, there were times last basketball season where we do 3 or 4, and because you had to. You probably had weeks where you were on almost every night because there's that appetite for it. So I hope that's the case again.
All right, Mike. Thanks for coming on this time, and I'll look forward to bringing you back on as the season gets closer.
Awesome. Appreciate it, Sunny. Take care.
With Robinhood Gold, you don't need a silver spoon to eat up the financial favors of the 1%. Robinhood Gold allows others to get the rates and perks usually reserved for the high society. Now, the resourceful individual with Robinhood Gold can earn the very liberal rate of 4.5% APY on uninvested cash, receive unlimited 1% deposit bonuses, and be rewarded with a handsome 3% retirement boost on an IRA account. Robinhood Gold provides the privileges of a high net worth for any net worth. These generous benefits are now available for only $5 a month. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. Sign up at robinhood.com/gold. Terms apply. For product-specific disclosures, visit robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. Rate may change. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold, LLC. Okay, it's Friday. It's time for me to make a prediction. I know we've previewed Penn State, I feel like ad nauseum. Not just me either. It's been a lot of content creators, a lot of college football coverage, especially the Illini being 4-0, Penn State being undefeated 3-0, and now this whiteout nonsense that Brett inadvertently got himself involved with. But at some point, predictions need to be made. As of this recording, the spread has gone to 18. And again, like everybody else, when I saw that opening spread, I thought this was extremely disrespectful. And this would be the lock of the century, plus 18. And for the last 3-4 days, it seems that everyone has been saying the same thing, that this should be a close game, that a lot of people predict Penn State to win because, I mean, they're probably a better team overall. They've got more talent on their team. But to take the 18 points. And when everyone tells you that Vegas made a mistake, it's usually when a new Vegas tower goes up. And that's why, I'll be honest, I'm more nervous about this game than I was last week about Nebraska. Nebraska, I knew was a 50-50 game. I thought if I had to come up with my own line, that this game would be somewhere along the lines of Penn State minus 10, maybe 13, but in that range. The fact that it came out at 17.5 and lingered there for a while, and was, again, 18 at the time of this recording, makes me wonder if the Illini are in for a humbling on Saturday night with this whole whiteout crowd that Penn State's trying to bring in. But with that being the case, I know that there's certain commenters here who like it when I pick against the Illini. So, in a way, I think I'm going to appease some of you. I do think that there's a game plan for Illinois to win. And I don't think it's a foregone conclusion. But if I'm betting with my head and not my heart, I'm going to say it's a Penn State victory, 30-24. Again, more than enough covering the spread. I think it's going to be a close game. The keys are going to be the same as it's been almost all season long. Try to score early. Take that white-out crowd out. It happened against Nebraska. Illinois was the first one to score. Once you're up 7-0, no matter what, no matter how hyped that crowd has been, no matter how long they've been in the stands, if Illinois scores first, automatically, even if it's a 10% doubt, the doubt starts creeping in. Maybe these orange and blue guys are better than we thought. 4-0 is 4-0. Maybe this is a game we got to be worried about. And let's be honest. It seems James Franklin always has a reputation of not being able to win the big one. Now, naturally, of course, this is mostly directed towards Michigan and Ohio State. But Illinois is a well-coached team. They're a very good team. I believe in the X's and O's of our coaching staff, in particular in the second half. Keep in mind, even against Nebraska, in that second half last week, we only allowed 7 points. We barely allowed any semblance of a rushing game. James Franklin, for as good of a coach as he is, and I genuinely think he's one of the top 15 coaches in America, he's not an X's and O's guy. Now, granted, Kotelnicki is, and that's my number one worry of this entire game. Kotelnicki drove us wild last year. We had no answers for him. Have we figured something out this year? Is this going to benefit Aaron Henry, knowing what he's going to go up against because he already went up against it last year? I talked about how this game on Saturday night can kind of be Luke Altmaier's revenge game. The fact that he had those 4 interceptions in the first half last year, and everyone kind of wrote him off. Well, it's arguable that a lot of people wrote off Aaron Henry as well. Not just against the Penn State game. The Penn State game, we actually competed reasonably well. In fact, the defense, if I recall, played pretty well. But it's Aaron Henry's revenge game against Andy Kotelnicki. We've seen the seemingly 100% improvement of Aaron this year. And it could be a game where he's able to finally redeem himself of the nightmares for the past season. He gets revenge against the one offensive coordinator who really just flat out had his number. Aaron Henry has had a very rough couple weeks dealing with his family issues. There's nobody in the world who roots for the Illini who can't be hoping that this works out for Aaron. And think about it. Can you imagine being 5-0 going into the bye? And then you have Purdue next? I'm not saying it's going to happen, but the opportunity is there to be bowl eligible and get to 6 wins in your first 6 games. But you got to start with Penn State first. This game's not going to be an easy one. We're underdogs, absolutely. Nobody really thinks that we have a chance of winning, except the guys in that locker room, except the coaching staff. And that's why, unlike previous regimes, I'm looking forward to Saturday night. Years back, I would not be looking forward to Saturday night. I'd grab a couple beers early because I knew that we were in for a beatdown of some sort. But I fully expect the Illini, who, again, if I'm being honest here, I don't think they're at the level of where Penn State is at yet. And that's okay. We're a rebuilding program. Penn State has been good at their level for years now. Our goal is to aspire to be at Penn State's level. But even though we may not be quite at that talent level yet, our coaching staff, I fully expect to have us competing all the way through the game. And if that's the case, if we can keep it close, I'm telling you, the way Luke Altmaier, his mannerisms, and I'm not even talking about play. I'm just talking about watching him. Pat Bryant, our defensive backs, they're not afraid of the moment. All they need is the chance to be in the moment. And that's going to be the key. Penn State's got one heck of a running game. A running game unlike anything we've seen so far this year. We've struggled against the running game. We got lucky, as I mentioned earlier, that Nebraska kind of stopped handing the ball off in the second half last Friday. I think the key is, can we contain their running backs? Singleton, if he was on an SEC team, would be considered a Heisman finalist. He's really that good. If we can contain their running game, can we get a quarterback who doesn't really make mistakes to make a mistake? If anyone can, it's our ball hawks on the secondary. All I know is either way, it's going to be a fantastic game. We may not win. I don't project us to, but you know what? I thought we were going to lose against Kansas too, didn't I? I may not think we're going to win, but I know we're going to compete. And I can't say this enough. It's a good time to be a fan of the Illini. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. And that's going to wrap it up for today's episode of Locked On Illini. Please check out Mike Carpenter's 200 Level podcast. It's one of the OG podcasts. He's an absolute fanatic when it comes to Illini athletics, and I doubt this is going to be the first that you've heard of him. check out his book. I'll have the book somewhere in the link in the description once I find it. Let me know your final predictions for Penn State. I'm curious. Are Illini fans confident? How are you feeling? Are you more confident against Penn State or Nebraska? Or you may not necessarily be confident to beating Penn State, but are you more confident than you would have been a week before? Let me know what you think. On your way out, please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Again, costs you nothing, but it helps our channel immensely. We're not done at Locked On Illini here throwing out content. I've got an official preview with the Penn State host, Locked On Nittany Lions, that will be dropping probably sometime this evening or maybe Saturday morning, the day of the game. And hit that notification bell. I can't say this enough. Immediately after the game, I'm going to be going live. And if we have a good enough audience, last week we had almost 300 people. If we have enough people, I might just make it a call-in show. Let me know if you want a call-in show. I can drop a link. We can call in, good old sports radio style. I want to hear from you guys. Win or lose. Should be a fantastic game. Can't wait to talk more about it. Again, stay tuned to this channel. We got another couple videos this week because I'm here producing Illini content daily for you guys. And that's not going to stop anytime soon. Until next time, ILL. Love you guys.